Call the regular council meeting of February the 6th to order. I have two late items for addition, and I've got to tell you, I hate late items, but I'm responsible for one of them. So they are two letters that are sitting on your desk, councilors. If you accept them as introduced in the agenda, they would go as items 6D and E. The D would be the North Coast Ecology Center, sorry, and E being the fisheries one. It does require unanimous adoption to bring in these items. Can I have a motion to accept them? Randhawa and Adi, any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried unanimously. I have the approval of the agenda with the recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting as amended to include those two items, regular council meeting of February the 6th be adopted. Councilors Cunningham and Nish, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We have, for the very first time, just for the sake of people watching, maybe watching at home, we made a change to the council procedures bylaw. At the beginning of January, it was implemented. This is the very first time I think it's going to be taken advantage of. Item number 4 on every council agenda is public comments regarding agenda items. So people from the public are able to not come and speak on any topic they want, but rather if they look at the agenda and they want to make a comment about an upcoming item on the agenda, they're welcome to do that. Of course, we'll restrict them on time and whatever, but it's just an opportunity for public input. With that being said, I do know that we have at least one person that wants to speak this evening, and so I'll encourage you to come forward, identify yourself when you do that. Because I'm aware of the situation, though, I'm going to just put a little extra explanation around this one. Council had a public hearing 2 weeks ago, and there's very strict rules around after the public hearing is closed, receiving any further information by council. Staff can receive information. Council cannot receive further information on the matter. And so this evening, we've already talked, but I'm going to ask you to contain your comments only to the process, not whether you're in favor or against or anything that would indicate on the matter itself, but rather your desire around process. And with that, take it away.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council, for this opportunity. I think that this addition to the agenda is brilliant, and as I said before the meeting, I really commend you on doing it. I hope that that people do take advantage of this to comment. And I won't get into specifics, and I'll also be brief. Those of you who know me well know that this is dangerously close to being past my bedtime.
For those that don't know you well, your name is?
Bruce Wishart. I'm very sorry.
There you go.
And we will have to pull out fairly soon here, just because we have a very early start shooting tomorrow. I apologize in advance. So there's only a couple things that I really want to point out. One of them is that, yes, we did learn about this very late in the day. I saw the bylaw online only on Friday afternoon, and I have to say that that's on me. I'm sorry. There was a time when I was far more engaged and far more conscious of online communications from the city, but for the past few years, I've been distracted by somewhat bigger threats, and so it's my bad. On Friday, we started a petition with Paul from Sunset. It only ran over the weekend. I wasn't sure of the process at that point. We started a petition to just ask council to consider tabling this until there's been more discussion. And it only ran over the weekend, but we already have over 60 signatures on it. I'll leave a copy here. We also this morning walked a hard copy of the petition down 3rd between City Hall and First. And no business owner or manager was aware of this. They'd never heard of it. They have the same issues with it that we did, to everyone. One of them said that they'd found a questionnaire about parking one time online, filled it out. That was the last they heard of it. That led me to the parking strategy, et cetera, et cetera. There is a problem downtown, and it goes a little wider than we even knew before this petition started. We were surprised, for example, from circulating the petition and the comments we were getting back to learn that Fourth West is part of the downtown parking problem. Staff are parking up on Fourth, using it as overflow, using the stairs to access Third. People on Fourth are having concerns, safety concerns.
I've got to, you're getting just a little bit more into the issue there.
Okay, no, it's just all I was trying to demonstrate is that I'm not alone. I feel dumb for not knowing, but I'm not alone. And so all we're asking is the council table the bylaw and give a little bit more of a chance for particularly business, but we've also heard from customers and residents, obviously on Fourth, that they would like an opportunity to speak to it more too. I don't know if that's another public meeting. That's council's decision. I'm just hoping for a bit more time.
Okay.
That's it. Any questions?
No, I think that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Petition's there, and thank you again for the opportunity.
No, appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Wishart. Is there anyone else that, with all the same clear warnings, this is not an opportunity to speak for or against it? All right. Hearing none, I thank you very much. You get to be the honorary first person to take advantage of the new, what we may end up calling the Wishart Amendment. I have no idea, but. All right. With that, we'll call that public comment portion to an end. We move on to the consent agenda, and I appreciate that you've come here tonight. There is nothing that binds you to stay and watch the whole meeting, so you're free to leave at any time. That you're welcome to stay all the way through too. But anyway, consent agenda. You have in front of you the consent agenda with council minutes, correspondence, and release of closed meeting items if there were to be any. The recommendation is that all items on the consent agenda be accepted and filed. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Randhawa, Councillor Adey, any discussion? Anything you want pulled or particular attention drawn to? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much. We move on to staff reports. 6A, report from the planning manager regarding style guideline policy for wayfinding signage. Recommendation that council adopt wayfinding signage style guidelines developed by Tourism Prince Rupert for all future wayfinding signage in Prince Rupert. Can I have a motion to that effect, please? Councillors Cunningham and Niche. Any discussion? Dr. Buchan, did you want someone to speak to this at all?
Your Worship, if council would like a little more description around it, the planning manager would be happy to do that. It's up to you, the wish of council.
I see. Councillor Cunningham, go ahead.
I just want to point out for the record, I know it's written down here, but I keep hearing people saying, what's this costing the city? What's this costing the city? Why are we wasting tax dollars on this? There is no cost whatsoever to the city. It says right in here, the resolution has no cost implications to the city's budget. I just want that out there so
great
we can let people know, because I keep hearing this over and over again.
Okay. Councillor Randhawa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm getting really good feedback from residents, both welcome signs each side.
Yeah.
People really like that. They really appreciate
Good.
it. Thanks, staff and everybody involved there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councillor, did you want to hear from Manager of Planning? Councillor Adey.
I don't. The report's fairly clear. My question was, would that then include, as we find ourselves replacing street signs, would we?
There you go.
Would that include that or not?
So you do want to hear from the manager.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Manager Pope.
Thank you to Councillor Adey through his worship. The resolution is just for any wayfinding signage, so that's directional tourism. It would not include street signs, any kind of private businesses, anything on private property, etc. So it's really just the type of signage that you see out there currently, and making sure that we have a cohesive design. going forward.
Great. Councillor Ady.
I would just follow up that a day or so ago, I went by the main Welcome to Prince Rupert sign and saw it for the first time, and I certainly think it's an improvement. So I'm very pleased with it, and the images of the rest look great.
Great. Councillor Cunningham.
It's like any other piece of art. There's people that like it, people that
Sure.
don't like it, and people that are going to voice their opinion one way or the other. You know, it doesn't matter. Like some people like Picasso, and I look at it and say, I think my 6-year-old kid can do the same thing. So, you know, it's one of those things that's I think it's an improvement to what was there, and I like it. But you know, it is what it is. As long as it doesn't cost us anything, I don't mind.
All right, call for the question. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much. I have a report from the Manager of Communications, Engagement, Social Development with regards to an application to UBCM for Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for Emergency Support Services Capacity Funding with the following recommendation: that Council supports the City's application for funding to the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for Emergency Support Services Capacity Funding. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillors Cunningham, Nish, discussion. Dr. Buchan, did you want to?
Your worship, I have nothing to add. We'd be happy to take questions.
All right. I think the report's very good. It's clear. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We have a report from the corporate administrator with a request for support for Tourism Prince Rupert. Recommendation is that Council directs staff to provide a letter of support for Tourism Prince Rupert for their kayak and canoe launch project, and that Council directs staff to provide a letter of support for Tourism Prince Rupert's application to the NDIT, Northern Development Initiative Trust, Recreation Infrastructure Program, and that this support be contingent on approval of the 2023 City of Prince Rupert budget. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillors Ady, Councillors Cunningham, any discussion, questions, concerns? Dr. Buchan, is there anything you wanted to have added?
Your worship, we have nothing to add.
All right. Councillor Cunningham.
Shouldn't the 500 estimate for maintenance annually be under enhancement grants, not under the budget?
Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The request was not received in time for the community enhancement grants, and thus we would look to put it into the budget for 2023.
There you go. Councillor Ady.
Maybe I'm just missing it or missing some attachments. Where is this intended to go? Where is the kayak launch intended to be?
Can somebody answer that?
Yes, of course, Mr.
Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intent is to put it down in Cow Bay in the marina.
Okay.
So we can put some information online as to where the actual location is.
Thank you. Councillor Rondawa.
Yeah, it was discussed as part of the tourism committee too. So it was discussed. They had few. They are looking for not only one. They have few locations they are looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But they're looking for
Thank
funding
you.
first.
All right. Councillor Cunningham.
Is this going to be on that little float where we used to have that? Okay, and are we setting a precedent here when, because it's too late for the enhancement grant, we're going to put this into the budget and other groups can come forward that we're too late for the enhancement grant and say, well, can this be put in the budget also?
Dr. Buchan.
Your worship, that is a risk.
I note that the third bullet is that it is contingent upon council's approval of that budget. So, you know, council can always say no at that point in time, right? All right. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We move on to item number D, late item number D. It is a request from North Coast Ecology Center, and it is for a letter of support. They are applying for a community enhancement grant, I believe, from the Port of Prince Rupert. And it has to do with Their plans to purchase, modify a shipping container into a mini ecology center, similar to what they did in 2021, hoping to be part of the shipping container marketplace being set up along the promenade walk in Cow Bay or nearby, and hope to have the staff and volunteers to be open several days a week from May through September. Can I have a motion, please, Councillor Forster, Councillor Rondawa, to provide the letter of support? Any discussion? Councillor Ady.
Just reflect my visit to what they put together last summer was that it was a really good initiative. The kids that were there found it really interesting, and I think it's a positive thing to support.
Great, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Item number E came in later, and was a specific request. The issue has died down just a little bit, but it was a specific. This letter isn't the best part of what I could have put in front of you, but it came from it came from UFAWU, but particularly concerned on there are discussions around reducing or rather increasing the salmon escapement up river by as much as 600,000 fish, which would have a very damaging effect on local fisheries. So there's a specific request that we write to several of the parties, and I'll just read you, if you don't mind, just very quickly what the request is. That we write to, I won't name the people, but Northern Panel co-chairs and Canadian commissioners, ask them to abide by the science advice to hold a skeena management strategy evaluation and follow the wild salmon policy, which requires DFO to consider impacts on all users. So it would be to send that communication out on behalf of Councillor Cunningham. First of all, can I have a motion?
Yeah, I was
You're
going to
moving,
put forth a
Councillor
motion.
Cunningham, Councillor Ady. Any other discussion? Councillor Cunningham.
You know, this is damaging to the commercial gillnet and seine fishery. You know, this escapement goes up, gets into interior fishing. It's then becomes a commercial fishery for people in the interior with a degraded product because as the salmon's gone upstream. It's not as good a product as you're going to get if it's fished at the mouth of the river, and it's damaging to the economy of this town in so many ways. Our fishery is being beat up to the point where it's on its last legs, and anything we can do to encourage DFO to wake up and start looking at the fact that they're not managing but mismanaging the fishery, then we should be involved in it. And I strongly recommend we send this letter.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much. We move on to bylaws. City of Prince Rupert Road zoning amendment bylaw number 3504 for parking specified area, that council gives third reading to the proposed City of Prince Rupert zoning amendment bylaw number 3504 to waive parking requirements for new buildings with the exception of residential only buildings in the parking specified area. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Cunningham, Councillor Naish. Any discussion? Councillor Cunningham.
I would like to see us defer this for this meeting and put it back to staff that they have a meeting with the interested parties and then get back to us on it if that's possible. That would be my motion.
So the motion is to postpone until the next regular council meeting. That's a seconder. Thank you very much. Dr. Buchan.
Your worship, can I say that you postpone until after staff have had a chance to meet with interested parties?
All right. Okay. So I agree with that change. So until postponed until after staff have had a chance to meet with concerned parties. All right. Councillor Cunningham.
That's a friendly amendment to the motion, and
It's a friendly amendment. If you accept it, seconder accepts it, all good. Thank you very much. Any further discussion on the motion to postpone? All in favor of the motion to postpone? Okay, the motion is postponed. Moving on then to City of Prince Rupert zoning amendment bylaw number 3505 with a recommendation that council give third reading to City of Prince Rupert zoning amendment bylaw number 3505. There is a report there, and can I have a motion, please, to that effect? Councillor Ady and Councillor Niche. Any discussion, questions, concerns? Councillor Ady.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a local contractor about situations that might arise related to this one. So I'll offer it as a hypothetical question and see where we go with it. What if there is say a flood, a house is flooded out, and there is an immediate need for moving stuff out of the house, presumably for the purposes of this, into a container. So the fastest way to make that happen is to take advantage of the 60-day period. And then, in the opinion of the contractor, it becomes clear that the work involved in restoration would require a longer period of time. So, given that the 60 days is approximately 2 months, and since we've suggested that the temporary use permit, which is the alternative for a longer project, takes about 2 months, I'm just wondering, what would we do if there was a lag in between the need becoming apparent for a longer period of time, the application for the temporary use permit, and then the 60 days is up, but they need a week or two to cross that bridge to get to where they've created a longer term situation.
Dr. Buchan.
Your worship, we do try to be reasonable people in enforcing council policy and bylaws. If there was a week or two in between that, I would say that we only really do enforcement when there's complaints. So if somebody was to complain, and by the time that we were able to act on the complaint, a week or two it's gone. So I don't think that would be really a particularly big issue. However, just earlier discussions today about temporary use permits, another solution actually would be to consider delegating temporary use permits to staff, so we don't actually even need the full 2 months. So that's something that we'll be coming back to council with in a while, not right away, with council to consider, so we can be a little more nimble on such matters. Delegating the ability for some types of temporary use permits is one of council's choices. So this council might want to take advantage of that.
Councillor Ady.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of those situations there would be a building permit triggered, and if the building permit's triggered, now you have 365 days, and if it's with a right. So, any other questions, Councillor Niche?
Well, and just reading this here, it says under G, it says no shipping container may be on site for 30 days after the date of shipping container removal. So if I'm reading that correctly, you actually have 60 plus 30 days, because you wouldn't actually have to remove it for 30 days after the 60 days. So am I correct in that?
I read it differently, so we can ask for clarification. My reading is that you're not allowed to remove the container and then put another one back in right afterwards. You have to wait 30 days before you can do that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Manager Pope.
Yes, Councillor Ady's interpretation was the intention of that statement.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
There was some clarification to it, but I would like to see P1 public use included into the areas shipper containers are permitted in the M1, M2, M3, and M6 zones, and also add P1 to that, because that's public use. And I've seen around town there's some P1 areas that now are using containers as an industrial use in it, when possibly that should be rezoned to light industrial. But the problem with that is we have hardly any industrial area for companies to set up in. So they've taken the choice of doing it. Like if you look at some of the P1s and that, and I'd like another look taken at that particular area before we pass this, simply because I think it's something that we should take into consideration. People aren't lining up to come to this town to open businesses and that, and we have to help them any way we can. And some of the existing businesses have taken advantage, whether it's legal or illegal, and to branch out into different areas and have used containers. And and even on a construction site now, you see containers popping up for the tools, a coffee room, or things like that. There's a lot of the use of containers. My main concern with containers is in residential area. Any industrial setting, I think we should look at, like, if you look at C3, service commercial campsites. If a future campsite comes into this town, and we have one now that I do believe it might have containers. I don't know. I haven't checked it lately. But there's different areas that are commercial industrial use that we're not including in this. And I know Dr. Bucket and I sort of lock horns on this a bit, but and he showed me the D of section 1. Shipping container for temporary storage is permitted per property. Placement on private property in all zones with the following conditions. Well, the city has these containers that we're using, and they're in P1. And they're specific uses. The fire department has one for hazardous training. It's still a container. And the civic center has containers behind it with stuff in it. The yard has it. They're all P1. And so here we are. Can the city do something that other people can? I think it's something we should take a good look at.
Dr. Buchan.
Your worship, that is a good point and good question. The intent of this bylaw amendment wasn't to address allowing these shipping containers as permanent uses in zones. It was finding a way to allow for temporary uses under certain circumstances, so they could go in for a while. And if there's a building permit, up to a year. I think that if council is interested in looking at the idea of this going in to the P1 zone as an outright use without any restrictions, council maybe could, well, there's two choices. Council can bring this back to second reading and do an amendment and another public hearing, or they can refer the matter to a future omnibus bylaw where we do a number of smaller changes. And so there's two choices there for council: to refer it for consideration in a future omnibus, or to go back to second reading and another public hearing for this particular one.
My recommendation for council, it would be that we approve this, and then right on the heels of that, I promise you, I'll give you a chance to make a motion to direct staff on reviewing the bylaw. That would be my recommendation. Councillor Cunningham.
Well, I like the idea of a second public hearing. We had a public hearing tonight, not one person showed up. Containers in this town is a big problem, and they're all over the place. And like I say, residential areas, I have a problem with them because they're popping up regularly, and that's more of a bylaw enforcement problem because we haven't been enforcing our bylaws than anything else. But my read on this is, we had a group in here tonight that were unaware of it. And I tend to disagree with the fact that, it's been out there since last August. The strategy for parking and everything else. And, I've went and read a couple of comments, and I'm just flabbergasted that people say, well, it's at short notice and things like this. We need public discussion on this stuff. But again, we could have another group in here very shortly about containers, especially with industrial use.
Sure.
And commercial use. So I would like to just, make it nice and simple. P1, and and then anything else, it'll be a variance or whatever. But like if a campsite starts up, and God help, we need campsites in this area, and they're going to put a container in to store stuff in that, and then we're looking at a variance or something else, and then and we have so many different zones, and some people don't even know what zone they're in sometimes. It's it gets kind of confusing to the public when it's confusing to us too. And I just think that, you know, if we pass this, I'd like to see a second public hearing or another gathering. And the staff doesn't need to meet with every specialty group out there. But this is something that I think, because of our lack of industrial and light industrial areas, then, you know, we had problems up in the Yellowhead over this, and it was just one person with one container, but the whole area is sprinkled with containers and that, and you know, and it just goes on and on. And I just think we should take a close look at where we start restricting containers in any type of industrial setting.
Councillor Niche.
I agree with Dr. Buchan about the fact that this is more for the temporary use and the you know, the short-term use of containers. So I think we should just move ahead passing this one, and then we can have that discussion later about having, you know, discussions about containers in public spaces and that as another bylaw. So that would be my suggestion.
Dr. Buchan.
Your worship, in trying to understand the implications of all the comments, P1, I appreciate that some people may be using P1 for industrial uses, but that's actually illegal in itself. So if some properties are being used for industrial purposes that are P1, that's a different matter. And it may be a matter that we need to look at, but you know, that's an extensive process to try to fix, and typically that's on an owner by owner or application by application basis. Changing the bylaw to put P1 in as an outright use for storage containers is principally going to benefit municipally owned properties or those that are more institutional in character, like churches and assemblies and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure that the industrial question is necessarily fixed by putting P1 in if the industrial use of the P1 zone is the rationale, because that in itself is a problem. You know, this is a problem that I think maybe deserves more consideration, and we can certainly look at it. But at this point in time, you know, the original intent of this was about enabling temporary use,
right?
You know, for those areas that were doing renovations. So, you know, and we're doing that because we're getting questions, or we have, you know, issues with people wanting to do this, and it's not a way that it's not managed in a way that's effective for when, you know, people will do it anyways, and we don't have regulations about how they can do it safely. So I think they're separate issues, and both should be looked at.
So I'm going to call the question, and I am going to, just in summary, I think it's absolutely right. I came here quite prepared to discuss a temporary use change. Hadn't really thought about the other issue. I think it does deserve to be explored, but I also believe in coming well prepared for that discussion, and I'm certainly not in that place tonight. I would love to have a report back. So I will call for the question on the particular motion in front of us, which is with regards to the third reading of bylaw 3505. Nope, sorry, 3462. Was it 3505? How come I'm in? Oh no, I see what I've done. Okay, thank you very much. 3505. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Cunningham is opposed. All right, I would now entertain a motion with regards to the other matter, to direct staff to give some consideration to how other zones might be treated, particularly the zones outlined by Councillor Cunningham, and a report back to council. Councillors Forster and Randhawa, any discussion on that matter? Councillor Cunningham.
So the way we're looking right now, the city has to get a temporary use permit every time they want to renew their containers. Is that correct?
I am not in a position to answer. Dr. Buchan.
That is correct, and so that's that very point, I think, is, you know, one of the rationales for taking a look at it. But it is something of a separate question. I mean, it is council's prerogative, but the answer is yes.
And so that would include any institutional or nonprofit organizations.
Dr.
When we
Buchan.
look at the zones, we look at all of the zones, the P1s, rather than who owns them.
Okay, so with regards to the new motion, all in have you, sorry, looking at Director Miller, making sure she kind of captured my ramblings. Councillor Unish, yes.
Just to also talk about well, we were just I totally lost my train of thought here. We were just talking about totally lost
Temporary.
it. It was the
temporary use on.
it was the temporary use.
Extending permits.
About can also in that process can we look at the temporary use and passing that on to the staff so the staff can maybe do that
right,
process rather than
correct.
us having to do it every time because it is kind of a
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So absolutely.
Yeah.
Councillor Cunningham.
That's one thing that should be expedited because we have a lot of flood damage and things like this. People need those containers in 24 hours, not
Yeah.
later on. So it's something that I think council should definitely look at and give the staff the authority to do something like that right away.
All right. I'll call for a question. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. City of Prince Rupert Fire Control and Protection Amendment Bylaw number 3515 with a recommendation that council give first, second, and third reading to the City of Prince Rupert Fire Control and Protection Amendment Bylaw number 3515. Councillor Forster, Councillor Adey, any questions, discussion? The reports have all been really good. If people are wondering why council sort of pours through answers fairly quickly, it's because the reports have been thorough, and anybody that's watching online is able to go and review those reports and understand why council's been able to move as quickly as it does on some of the issues. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. I don't believe there's any business arising. Comments, questions from Councillor Adey.
Unlike anybody else in Prince Rupert, I'd like to talk about the weather briefly. With respect to first, extend condolences to family and friends because of a recent loss on Highway 16. Losses if we go further towards Terrace. And the reason I bring it up is my first point about the weather is that it reinforces the need for us to continue advocating for whatever can be done to improve the safety of those roads in the winter months. I know in the consent agenda there's a point there where the regional district has sent a letter to that effect. So I'm not sure whether we need to either repeat something we've already done or find some other way to move that advocacy. But it clearly there are times when that highway is very unsafe and it needs to be either safe or closed. And sometimes it does get closed, and that's inconvenient, but that's better than the alternative if it's not safe. So I would like to see us find a way to move that advocacy along to the province. I assume would be the recipient. So that was my first point. The second point was with respect to the slopes. I noticed there's quite a bit of blowdown up along Wantage Road, but also on the highway as you go by the industrial park. You can see that there's been quite a bit of slippage on the quite steep hillside there. So I'd like to ask where we are in terms of monitoring those circumstances. It seems to me that it's been a little more severe this year than it has been in the past. And my final question, which might be answered at the same time, is whether the recent rains have produced any more surprises in terms of our infrastructure. I guess I'm asking that be directed to the Director of Operations.
Yeah, I'll go to Dr. Buchan and then he can.
Your Worship, I'll defer to the Director of Operations.
Director Pucci.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. So 3 questions there. The first question is, yes, we actually have a ministry meeting next week with the new head of the region. She's coming down, and myself and the mayor met with her and the ADM 2 weeks ago, and she's coming back for a staff visit so we can bring up those concerns around highway safety directly with the person that's in charge of that highway safety. So we'll do that, and if council wants further documentation on that and letters, we can produce those as staff as well. The second one was around the slopes along the highway. So the slopes along the highway and around that corner are not what we take care of. That has to do with the highway safety and their contractors in the area. But we could definitely bring it up with those contractors about that safety and the blowdown and making sure that they're cleared and off the shoulders. So I can bring that forward with the contractor. And the third one was, can you remind me?
Councillor Eadie.
Infrastructure surprises.
Oh, yeah. So as you know, council and the community is aware is that we get these heavy rains quite often, and there is certain areas that puddle and pond, and we have to go and continually clear catch basins. But overall, after a couple hours after it's rained, a lot of the water has subsided. It wreaks havoc on our infrastructure. I mean, there's no question about it. Our roads are super saturated underneath, which creates pumping and breaking down of the top surfaces, and now that saturation moves through the different layers. So that creates the undulations and the waviness of the road. Proper structure once things get rebuilt usually seals that top coat so that we don't get that. So that's what we're aiming for in all of our repairs. But it just does. It wears everything down, but I think our teams are keeping up with it. We try and put the signs out. We try and clear all the catch basins we can, but it does flood at times.
Councillor Cunningham.
Two things while we're on blowdown and that. It was brought to my attention. I haven't checked it out yet, but evidently there's a tree down on the path or the stairs coming down from 4th West to 3rd West. And are you aware of that?
Director Pucci.
Through the mayor, I wasn't aware of that. We heard about that earlier this evening, and I've already sent an email to Public Works to have a dangerous tree assessment go there in the next day or so.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
It was brought to my attention the other day that somebody was looking for some councillors' phone numbers, and they went on the website, and our phone numbers are no longer on our website underneath the councillors' names. And they wanted to know how to get a hold of a councillor other than email when they didn't have email.
So I would make this recommendation that someone from your staff, Dr. Buchan, reach out to all of council, and those councillors who wish their phone number to be on the website can indicate that. Thank you, Dr. Buchan. Any other comments? Councillor Randawa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like I brought up a couple of weeks ago about the potholes. So I saw city staff fixing those potholes today. But in last couple of weeks we had many potholes pops up. So I'm hoping we'll fix very soon. Thank you.
All right. I don't know that there's much to say, but I'll give you an opportunity, Director Pucci. Potholes.
We do have potholes. The weather obviously plays a huge factor in the creation of potholes and then also fixing potholes. So like a day like today, not the best day to do it, but when they get large and can damage vehicles, we have to go and do what we can, even if we know that it's likely going to have to be redone next week. So sometimes we're doing it just to have to redo it because we don't want to damage the vehicles, but we do note them. There is a number to call for potholes, and we get to them as soon as we can. Our staff has just been overrun with water leaks, sewer leaks, and all of that. So we've been triaging that, taking people off of roads crews and putting them towards other crews to keep up with all of that other infrastructure, the critical infrastructure. But we do, whenever we have our opportunity, we fix potholes, and there are a lot of them around town. We are aware of it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I call for a motion to adjourn. Counselor Cunningham, Counselor Nish, all in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much.